Sure.
Okay.
All right.
I'm ready.
We're live. Welcome back, everybody, to our Lake and Lara drawing and sketching session. It's good to see you again, Eric. It's been a while since we did this, but we had a bunch of projects in between and a few little other things happening. Where are you at now?
Yeah. I We traveled all the way to Columbia, South Carolina. Going to be doing some projects here, and great to be around the family.
Yeah, that's
So it's
good.
been nice.
You're in
Hey,
a new little spot there.
we're supposed to start every show off with a fiasco.
Oh, that's right. We're gonna try to have zero fiascos today.
Where's our fiasco?
Maybe it's coming.
All right, now, and of course, if you have a problem, you'll just log off and log back on
Yeah,
if we have a
for sure.
little
Yeah,
glitch there.
if there's a little glitch. We're artists, not technical people, so in our defense. So you're going to be doing some painting
So what
today,
are we
oil
doing
painting.
today? What I
You had
am.
some. You had an image of the
I
Grand
got a
Canyon that we're
little
working on.
on our way over here. We took a little detour up and saw the Grand Canyon. Took a lot of source material that I wanted to paint. So I'm doing this smaller
Show
painting.
us.
It's about 16 by 20, 16 by
Oh,
20
that's nice.
here. And so one of the things I'm going to do is I'm trying for kind of a broken color technique. I was starting doing that effect on this piece here at Carmel Valley.
Yeah.
And broken color is kind of like, it's scumbling. It's where you have color underneath showing through.
Yeah.
And it works particularly good when you're suggesting detail. And the Grand Canyon is a lot of detail. I don't know how much I can get painted. I'm going to actually go as fast as possible, see if I can get it done. And I'm going to try to break it down to just working with a filbert like this, a round, excuse
Okay.
me.
That's a lot of coverage. Yeah.
And these are my premixed colors. It's a lot of coverage. This is all my premixed colors right here. I just went through, and I've got my photo art source on the screen,
Nice.
and I'm just ready to go. And then what are you doing today?
Well, today I'm going to be discussing and demonstrating a technique I like to use for duplicating, which basically is copying. But I like to call it duplicating a little more because even though the goal of an artist isn't specifically to copy every single detail exactly as we see it, we do want to have the ability to duplicate something accurately. So there are some tools that we can use to do that. Um,
Which is what I'm doing, trying to, you know,
yeah,
make some representation of this giant hole in the ground.
yeah, exactly, for sure. Hey, I think I'm looking at the live stream. It looks like it's stuttering a second. So to the audience, I'm just going to restream this buffer real quick. So just stick with us for 1 second. This is not a fiasco.
Favorite episodes on This American Life is fiasco. Did you ever hear that?
I remember that. Okay, let's see if these settings work a little better. Okay, so I'm going to show my screen real quick. Let's see, we'll do something like this. And I'm going to hop on over to my website at rubenlara.com/duplication. And here is where I explain this technique that I'm going to be demonstrating today. So there's basically 4 tools that you can use to be able to accurately draw what you see. And that's using plumb lines, angles, distances, and negative shapes. So if you want to learn about this in a little bit more detail, on your own, that would be great. It's at rubenlara.com/duplication. But what it means is that as you approach a subject, using any one of these 4 tools, you can basically start to observe your source material more accurately and hopefully lay that down on the page using some guidelines and not just guessing. So plumb lines have to do with either straight or horizontal lines where you can reference 2 common points. Angles is basically using your visual estimation of what these angles are. You'll see oftentimes artists doing that with their pencil, kind of pushing it out in front of them, and that's what they're doing is establishing an angle in their mind's eye to be able to lay it down on the page. The other one is distances, to say, okay, in this picture, this is the distance of one head, and so this arm is 1 head long, and this leg is, a head and a half or something like that. And the other one is negative shapes, and that's the ability to see the opposite of your main subject matter. So instead of your main figure, you're looking at the spaces outside of that main shape. So by using all 4 of these tools at once, you can basically self-correct, because that's the biggest challenge, I think, to drawing, right, Eric, is you're looking at something too long, you stop seeing the mistakes. You stop seeing where things aren't the way they're supposed to be. So
Right.
By using...
Till your wife comes.
Exactly. Who will always tell you the truth. So using these tools is a way to self-correct, on your own, because it's basically math and you can make some direct comparisons there. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. And I'm going to be drawing this guy. Let's see. Archer. I just feel like archery shapes are so dynamic. Really cool stuff. So I'm going to put him over here to the side. And in this exercise, I'm going to draw it on the right using these 4 tools for duplication. And then at the end of the show, I will overlay it on top of the photo to see how close I got. And it may not be exactly perfect, but I think it'll be pretty close if I've used these tools correctly. So that's what I'll be doing. So I'll get back to you in a second, Eric, as well, in terms of where you're at on your drawing. But let me just start this off and explain what I'm doing here. I'm going to make a new document here. I'm just going to crop this, actually. We'll get something that's similar in proportion. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is give myself a little determination of where I want this figure to be. Maybe a little bit of this gesture, a little bit of a gestural curve, give myself an idea. I'm just going to start with maybe a shape that I feel is pretty clear for me. So you can see my screen right now. I'm going to take another piece of paper, a pencil. Okay, and quite literally, I'm just going to overlay this on the photo and see if I can match that angle right here. And I'm going to start off with this arm shape. So immediately I can look at the line I've made and determine, is that the same angle? And I'm seeing that it's not. So I'm going to erase that. And I'm going to try to match it a little bit more, something like this. And most crucially, your first shapes are the ones that are going to set the tone for everything. So that's what I really want to pay attention to. And I'm looking at this little spot right here. Let me just give myself a new layer. So I'm looking at his elbow and I'm thinking, okay, this distance right here, how does it compare to this distance right here? So now I'm using the distances tool and I've already made this shape right here, my elbow, and I'm thinking, okay, that distance is just a little bit shorter than this distance. So good, I think That's about the right shape there. And then I'm going to do this. Okay, and now I'm going to measure with my pencil. Let's see, this little wedge on the arm to his wrist is about the same distance there. So I'm going to do the same thing here. And that ends up about right there. So these initial shapes are the most crucial ones to kind of get right, because everything's going to fall off this. Now, if you notice, this little blue sky hole is now a negative shape, right? It's not exactly part of the arm, but I'm going to use now the negative shape tool to create that shape right there. And that's helping me. I'm looking at this shape right in there. That's helping me self-correct in case it needs to get bigger or smaller. And the last one I'll talk about before moving over to what you're doing there, Eric, is plumb lines. So now that I have this basic shape done, I might come in here and say, let me get a little bit closer on this guy here. I might come here with my paper and say, okay, right here where his wrist is basically where the front of his belt is going to be. So there's a plumb line right there. Okay, and if I do a horizontal one, I move across that way, I can now draw that exact same plumb line, and now I know as soon as I get down to the belt area that the belt has to land somewhere on this vertical plane. I don't know how far it is yet, but I know I'm not going to draw the belt out here, or I'm not going to draw the belt over here. It has to be somewhere on this plane. So I'm going to just indicate it right there for now, just for a second. If anybody has any questions, please ask. Got Amber and Tina
How about
on the wings.
I don't want to mess up
go
your
ahead.
groove, but you're using that term self-correct several times. I wonder if you can define that, even though it's kind of self-evident, but why is that important?
It's important.
What is that to drawing?
Yeah, it's important because you lose track of you end up losing track of where you're off. And in fact, right now I just saw a huge mistake. Speaking of self-correction. So let me just point out the mistake I just made. With this plumb line on the left, I see that the plumb line was actually at the beginning of this negative shape, and I have it cleanly on the end. So I got to move this plumb line over to the left. That's where that plumb line needs to be. I'm going to delete this one. Okay, and I'm also seeing that this negative shape has to have this negative shape plumb line has to happen after this bend. So that's wrong also. So look at this little house shape that's being made by that part of the arm. In fact, I'm gonna make this image just a little bit larger, and so my marks are a little bit cleaner here. Okay, so I'm talking about this shape right here. Here was my plumb line, and here is my negative shape of the sky hole, and here's the angle of the arm. And look at mine, totally off. So immediately I know that this. What's that?
I would sort of think like self-correction. Obviously, we think about driving analogy.
Yeah.
But the idea is overcorrection. I think sometimes when I mess up pieces, it's because I was sort of, you get kind of a fog.
Yep. Not paying attention.
And the next thing you know, your corrections have to be super large. So best to catch them when they don't cause you to have to overwork something to fix it.
Yes, I like that concept. Okay, this is making much more sense to me now. So immediately, if I had just kept going with this drawing, I'm just drawing maybe what I think an arm looks like or something. So I'm not drawing what I see. All right, I'm going to do the same thing here with this, the top of this little house shape. Bring a plumb line across, and I know that this, this knuckle shape is going to go above that. So yeah, so I'm just going to keep going with these shapes here. The last one I'm going to call out here is I'm going to measure this distance here. So this little sky hole that I've just colored in black, if I say 1, 2, it's about 2.5 of this width. So I'm going to tick that off. And yeah, that's about the right distance. So I've used all the tools so far. Angles, plumb lines, negative shapes, and distances to kind of get my early, one of my first, kind of masses in, which is good. What are you doing on your end, Eric?
I'm very thickly. I'm just kind of trying something a little different. I like the broken color effect, but I was a little too thinly painted last time on my last piece. So I'm coming in here and doing a little bit of an impressionistic technique where I go in this lights and darks, and I'm going through the piece and adding them in there. You can see I've got the broken color happening. And that if I'm careful and kind of work the whole piece, that I can kind of control the depth and the values at the next step when I start adding the midtones.
Nice.
We'll see. Could be a fiasco.
Somebody's gonna.
But having fun.
Good. I'm measuring this torso.
Gotta have fun, right?
1.5. Oh yeah. And you can't be afraid to mess up either.
Gotta be enjoying what you're doing.
Okay, so I think this belt's about right here. All right, now I'm looking at this angle of the belt. I'm gonna try to match that. I can already see that I started this figure way too large on the canvas. I'm gonna run out of space. That's okay, I'm gonna keep going. All right, the other thing I'm going to do is I drew these two angles, and I'm going to do a vertical plumb line going up, and that should just about, be close to where those knuckles are. So do the same thing here. Yeah, I think that works. So this was a spot you visited when you were going cross country, you said?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if we talked about it last time, but I love Edward Payne, and looking at some of his work really made me want to try painting, doing some Southwest art.
And you guys had never been to Grand Canyon before?
Just this year. This was the second time.
Oh, this was the second time.
And we were on the south face. The north face was burning.
Wow.
Normal occasion. But it was amazing. The key thing, though, is just like photography, right? Going and staying so the light gets, staying for the beautiful light. And we stayed, and it was just it.
Yeah.
It was absolutely amazing.
All right, I'm noticing on this picture here that this the pit of his neck, kind of this angle of his arm. So I'm going to extend that angle here, and I know that the pit's going to come all the way down that way. Using these marks to... And these are just standard drawing tools, right, that you kind of learn in art class. In your experience, Eric, I mean, the goal of art isn't exactly as it is, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, all copyists, right? If we're trying to copy, even abstract art sometimes is just a close-up of something we've seen, nothing new under the sun. But I do think that we're trying to create a story, and every story, you take all these elements, the time of day, the colors, all these things affect. And so one of the things that I've noticed about the Grand Canyon, for instance, is the fog came in, and like you see in the background of my photograph, it just turned everything into a light silhouette. And so if you're creating artwork, you can do that on your own piece. You can change it. You can make things more dramatic. You can make it more ideal. But if you're just replicating what you see, you're losing an opportunity to add a dramatic element and your own interpretation. So, but hey, a lot to learn from just copying stuff.
Yeah.
Even though the art teacher used to hate that word copy.
Well, I think it's such a valuable exercise because you want to be able to replicate. You want to be able to change things for a reason, right? And not because you've made a mistake.
And you know how things. Got to know how things look before you start changing body anatomy. You got to know how far you can push
Yeah.
muscles and stuff, right? So that's what I just absolutely adore about painting outdoors is that it's a learning experience. You're really learning firsthand. Instead of looking at just a photograph, you're watching the scene change, and it gives you it's an education in a time lapse.
Yeah.
It's a time lapse education of what's happening, and then you can find the areas and the times of day that you prefer, and use that sort of source material. Use those times to get beautiful source, or to go out and paint.
Yeah.
Usually, I'll do an underpaint ahead of time in anticipation for that nice weather,
Yeah.
that nice uh, lighting event. All right. So I've done a lot of the darks here. Can you tell? Am I still in the center?
Yeah, it's looking good.
And kind of has an interesting style right now that I'm not used to doing. But I think what I'm going to do to hold it together, Ruben, what do you think if I come in and put my brightest lights in here so I can bring my form back?
I like it.
All right, that's what
So
I'm going to try.
some artists do all their darks first. You tend to do all your lights first? Or it just depends on the piece?
I think I go back and forth. I think that the particular something as complex as this, I feel like my underpainting and my ground, which is this tone background, is my mid-tone. And so I've got my mid-tone there, the darks hold it together, and I quickly get to my lights, and then I have some form that I can manage. So like right now, this sky is not really white, but I'm going to come in and paint the sky color,
Okay.
and that'll sort of set the tone of how light everything else goes.
Okay.
Let's see.
I'm gonna do one more.
And I still want
do one more. Hey Eric, I'm gonna do one more bitrate change. It looks like it's a little bit laggy for some people, so I'm just gonna pause it real quick.
Sure.
Stick with us, folks.
Laggy. All right. I'm going to paint this sky right here in kind of a Monet broken stipple all the way across.
I like it.
Because it's going to look crazy. But even though this is going to go pretty much thick and solid, a little bit of that orange will creep through.
Yeah. I know, that's what's so nice about that warm underpainting. It gives a solid color all the way through.
I wanted to try like a green color on one, but I just keep going back to this same ground color.
I like it. Okay, I'm going to do a little bit more on this arm here, and I'm going to do a quick test, which is the scariest part when I overlay it over the photo to see if I've really done it correctly. So look what I'm just talking to everyone here on our stream here, but you can look too if you want, Eric. Part of these negative shapes too is some of the structure and the scaffold that I've built. So I've already kind of created these angles, and now I need to compare my own, scaffolding to what I see in the photo. And I think I'm doing pretty good. Look at this shape right here. This triangle seems to be a little bit different to me than this one. So I'm going to correct that.
Nice.
Again, I'm being more finicky with this because I want to get as close as I can in this exercise. But that's not always the end goal for drawing for sure. But it's a good exercise. I see here that this little corner of the triangle is tiny and the top end is large, and mine was half and half, so that's where I'm self-correcting. Get that small little wedge in there. Yeah, just changing your viewpoint and seeing it from another angle is so key.
Yeah. I remember we've seen some artists flip their work upside down, to achieve that.
Sure. Hey, someone says, sorry.
And also time is good too, right?
Bailey Kisomo. Sorry if this was already answered. I was a few minutes late. But how does Eric develop a traditional color palette while looking at a digital photograph?
How do I think I just pick out. I first off do adjustments in Photoshop with the piece to achieve what kind of color I like.
Okay.
You know. And so one of the things that I'm really using more of, and I think maybe you taught me this, is I always have a nice pool of gray on my palette. Like right here, I've got some dark gray or a Payne's gray, and then I'm always graying down my palette. And I think that's one of the things that I notice whenever you want a piece to be brighter, use more gray.
Yeah, because it makes a bigger difference with the bright colors
it's
around.
Just not. And then all of a sudden, when you want that screaming bit of sun, and when you want something, but I like mixing all my colors through it and try to stay a limited color palette is working better for me, I think, than getting a little bit crazy with too many variations.
Yeah.
Is that the same way with digital? Do you like to kind of limit your palette?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the danger with digital is because you have all the colors available, and so you can use anything for sure. But graying things down is always a key for me. Okay. I'm gonna stop postponing this arm. That was a good question. Thank you, Bailey. Okay, I think it's coming along. All right, I'm gonna do the front of his shorts here. He's got this serious lean. How do I want to check this out? I'm gonna extend this angle all the way up and see if I can match it here. It's coming through this little piece, coming through this little corner. Basically doing something like that. And if everything checks out, I should have created a new little triangle here, which I did. So I'm happy about that. Even though the triangle is not part of his body, it's telling me that my scaffolding is pretty good so far. All right. Self-correction is working, I think. Okay, I'm going to try to measure this distance right here at the bottom of the shorts and find another spot on him that is a similar distance. And I think it's the armpit to the elbow. So I'm going to mark that off and I'm going to measure it. So that means that his shorts should be coming somewhere about right there. And then it turns in. And then I'm going to do a vertical plumb line to see where the crotch of his shorts line up. And just go up. And that should be around just to the left of that little house roof. Okay. And where that point is exactly, I should be finding a little triangle that appears to be something like this. And this triangle lands above where the shorts turn. So notice I'm just continually re-referencing the existing scaffolding. The more lines I put down, the more accurate I should be getting as I go along. All right, I'm gonna do my first test. This is always the moment of truth. You ready, Eric?
A moment of truth. Let's do it.
Okay, I'm gonna copy this line work. I'm going to paste it over this dude here. And then I'm going to resize it to see if it's how close it is. So I'm going to take this corner and maybe something like that. So I'm basing it off of this angle of his elbow here.
Right.
Okay, not too bad so far. Not too
Pretty
bad.
good.
So yeah, it's getting there. So I think if I use the arm here on the left as kind of my touchstone. Let me zoom into this a little bit so you can see. maybe something like that. If I use this arm, his right arm is the touchstone, and this angle of the shorts, I just need to readdress this chest area is not as pronounced as I had it. And now that I see it, I can clearly see that now. I should have looked at the negative shape. But the shoulder area is good. This pit of the neck is good. The face is pretty good. The back is close. It's a little bit thicker. And then maybe the seat of the pants is a little bit too low. Not bad. I'm going to keep going. What didn't I just what?
Like that, Ruben.
Say it again. What didn't I just what?
Why didn't you trace it? What if someone is thinking, why don't you just trace it? What's the pitfall?
Well,
what's the pitfalls from always just relying on a tracing?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I feel like tracing is another great exercise for some, for understanding content. But if I want to stylize this at all, and I trace the photo, I'm going to lose opportunities just to get strong structure and find lines that kind of find each other, in the piece. So, I mean, look at these great angles I'm getting. That's, as a drawing, is stronger than the photo.
And that can happen to any artist, no matter how skilled they are. I was thinking about the Disney artists when they copied, traced, and rotoscoped over in Cinderella. It's still, sometimes it looks fantastic, and occasionally it's like, well, that's a little too photographic.
Yeah, it's true.
So
Brian Harris
when you
says,
trace,
looks great, Eric, really nice. And
What's
Brian
that?
Harris says, looks great, really nice. And Shan says, great technique, guys. Thanks, Shan. Thanks, Brian.
Shan Riches with a Cha.
Okay, Brian Harris, question for Eric, not related to duplicating as much. Perhaps you can comment on your approach to decision making on selecting a color harmony for your artwork and design.
I must have dated that last.
What's that?
time.
You're breaking up a little bit.
I think that trying to. Oh, can you hear me?
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead again.
I think that just choosing a color palette that reflects the art piece. This is a very, believe it or not, this is a muted palette, but what's really strong is the background. So I think trying to choose a color palette that will emote the right emotion and resisting the tendency to go too bright.
Yeah.
I just tend to go a little bit over bright and a little overblown with my colors, and so by pre-mixing my colors and just really focusing, since I have my drawing already, focusing on my color and tone, I think it helps me to improve. So I'm just constantly struggling with that, trying to fight the tendency to go too cartoony. And a limited color palette is like one of the simplest ways to fight that tendency to go a little bit too garish.
Yeah.
And loud. It's just limit.
And when you say limited color palette, we're talking about limiting the brightness, right? The saturation of these colors.
Yeah, and also just the sheer variety of colors. I guess I do a fairly complex. I have 9, 10 colors right here, but they are all versions of gray,
Yeah.
But when you get away and you start having some really pure colors, like
when you pair it up against that orange in the back, they really start to pop, even though they feel like they're just gray.
Yeah, I don't have any green on my palette, for instance. It looks like green is there, but it's blue. This blue and orange is, and this gray color is appearing green.
Yes.
So if I added green, I think what happens, it sort of fools your ability to manage your values, and next thing you know, your piece is kind of breaking apart.
Or it looks like a
fracturing.
circus.
Yeah, and that's something that when you're starting out, that's what all your pieces are doing. They tend to just look really loud and garish, and you're wanting a bright sky, and you just keep piling on the primaries. When what we should be doing is just going gray and just slowly adding some color in, just kind of managing it a little bit by pulling back.
Yeah.
Women have that figure, right? They call that an accent color on their outfits.
Yep.
You know, they sometimes a little pop of orange with a gray color scheme can just makes that orange look really special. It just pops.
Yep.
Anyway, don't know if that answers,
Yeah.
but it's a challenge, constant challenge.
Look at these great angles I'm able, just making this scaffold is forcing me to create a drawing that's more dynamic, I think, than
Exactly. I
than
think
the photograph.
yeah, looks great.
Jungle Boy. This kid's a jungle boy. You can already tell my brain is like not measuring anymore, and it just starts to veer. Okay, I think I'm gonna shrink this on the page because I really want to get let's see, some of that bow and arrow action in. All right, I'm gonna get this arrow in. I'm looking at the negative shape there with this shape right here that I'm looking at. And I think I'm going to take my paper and measure how long this arm is from his shoulder to the wrist. It's right there. And that is the same as from the bottom of the wrist just about to the belt. So there's on my drawing there to the belt. And that means that this is going to be about right there. Which, that makes that shape nicely, I think. Have you ever shot for like a for reals bow and arrow? A for reals one?
My dad would hunt. When he was growing up in Alabama,
Really?
he actually hunting and with a compound bow. But I can't imagine. I can't imagine
Like
trying to do that.
Just to shoot a bow. Like a lot of upper body. There's a place right down the road from our house. It says arch.
Dad's family. It was a family sport. Yeah. Munition.
Yeah. Okay, another question from Brian. Do you recommend a similar technique with design layout styles, or would more of a direct copying approach? Design and layout styles. I'm trying to think exactly what you're talking about there. Are you thinking of like print layouts, or similar taking with design or layout styles, a more direct copying approach? I'm not quite sure what you're talking about there, Brian, but it's probably because but I think you can apply the principles, to anything. It's really just using existing elements, relationships between existing elements to duplicate, to create on your canvas. But I imagine, you probably could use it with typography.
I don't know.
The layout.
Yeah, I'm wondering. Look at your layout there. If you were to lay out right over your graphic drawing there, that would give you a good, strong magazine page layout.
Yeah, that's true. Get some copy right here on the side.
I mean, maybe.
Old time story.
Yeah. Maybe. I'm trying these highlights here. Are you starting to see any sort of resemblance of a canyon here?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the shapes are already striking. Getting that light in there. Are you gonna put any super dark blacks in there? You're gonna keep it low contrast.
I think no. I typically hardly ever use black.
Yeah.
But you're talking darks.
Or maybe just darks.
I think I'm going to keep it fairly. Yeah, I think I'll see if I need it after I get these lights in here. I may need to come in here and redefine this.
Brian said, for example, design or print layout in a style that you might like and want to try to imitate. Oh yeah, definitely. Same principles. Just, find where these, probably more so, plumb lines, vertical, horizontal, relationships between things. And I think in a design layout, it's probably more going to be about proportions. So if there's a, big title here, I would probably try to identify, is this, set on thirds, divisions of 3 columns, or are they dividing it up in 12 or 16 or 8, and then just finding, where these spaces are between where the copy's laying. So yeah, you could definitely use the same principles for sure. Negative space. Good question. I hope people have been able to draw before everyone went back a little more. Do you miss your big studio space that you had
for that,
out west, Eric?
Well, yeah, definitely.
Uh-oh, looks like we lost you.
Studios.
Hey, I'm gonna call you right back on Skype.
Okay.
All right, let's call Eric again. Okay, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, good.
Can you hear me?
Yep, got you back in too.
You asked me if I miss my studio space. It's
Yeah.
absolutely beautiful. And it just reminded me, having a studio space that's inspiring is so important.
Yeah, I mean, you had that big vista, right?
You need inspiration. That will, and
You there? Looks like we're breaking up again.
you need inspiration.
Yeah. Okay, I caught that last part again.
I'm here.
Yep, got it. All right, I'm liking how these big, strong plumb lines kind of coming down here. See how it hits with these arrows here on the side. Yeah, it's looking pretty good. All right, next I'm going to drop in these bow lines, and here is a great opportunity to just compare angles, right? So there's the angle on the photo, and I'm just going to slide it over and compare. Yeah, it's pretty good, I think. And we'll do the same thing with the, looks like oh yeah, I used the exact same line already here. And then it just drops a little bit lower than the belt. And now I have a big opportunity to use, to see this kind of this negative shape right here between the bow and the armpit. So I'm going to drop this kind of scaffold out this way. Now I'm looking at these negative shapes, this one here and this one here, as I determine where this bow lands. This one's real easy to just try to guess and flub. Something like that maybe. And then this one's going to come and do something like this. Again, it doesn't have to be exactly spot on, but it's a good exercise to see how close you can get it. My deadline work, my project work, always improves. It's always better because it's just warming ready.
Yeah.
You know, doing it for myself.
Warming up. You spend much time warming up before you start actually doing an assignment or
No, I don't.
a piece.
That's what I'm saying is it when I am in the habit of just sketching, you know, for practice or just doodling, that it kind of becomes my warm up. That's why it's so important.
Okay.
How about you?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I need to do more of it because I think I noticed that halfway through painting, I feel like I really have gotten warmed up, and I can compare the pieces I were working on. You know, I was working on kind of cold right out of the gate, and it's
Yeah.
it's different. So you can see there's a need to kind of to get in the zone there.
Yeah. I did do
And it does.
the octopus that was on the pre-roll. I did that right before the show, and that helped. Just kind of
Nice.
get in the zone.
And people that maybe don't paint, and there might be people watching that don't paint right now, and they admire painters, they think it's something that's a gift that you're kind of born with, but it's work, and it needs time to think. You need to be able to play a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, for
It
sure.
happen on
And
its
there's a
own.
method, you know? There's a method to it, which is why
Yes.
it can be replicated. For
And
sure.
those methods, without that.
Yeah, recover.
Yeah, to experiment.
Yeah.
You don't want to be experimenting on final pieces.
Experimentation is super key.
You don't practice.
Agreed.
Anyway, you have to make that time. We don't have to explain it. We just have to make that time ourselves.
Yeah, it's true. All right, I'm happy with where this is at overall. I'm going to do one more test. I'm going to do some simple shading on this. Got about 10 minutes left, so I want to make sure I make a little bit of time for some shading. Okay, I haven't tested this bow. His eyes look a little weird, but I can work that out later, I guess.
One of the things I wanted to do, Ruben, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Is I wanted to paint there at the Grand Canyon,
Yeah.
But we were, social distancing and being careful, so that kind of, when you're painting outdoors, people lean over.
I know, it's like a social spot, right, where people congregate and.
So I'm glad I'm getting a chance to maybe use my memory.
Yeah.
And my source material.
Okay, I'm gonna do it again. Let's see if I did it correctly. Paste. I'm going to reduce the opacity of this a little bit. Let's bring this over. Resize this. I'm going to pin it right here at the elbow. And kind of hit the front of his shorts angle. Okay. Well, I totally misjudged the angle of the arm, which was a huge shift. So you can see that if I don't double check something, if I don't double what's that?
Puppet warp.
If I don't double check something soon enough, then I start making all these other decisions based on that spot. Because let me rotate this here. like that shape is correct right here with the negative shape with the arm. So I started going down a path. I assumed something was correct, and then I built all these other things on top of that. And so everything else that was based on the arm angle was off, even though the relationship with the arm and those elements is, is pretty good. So just goes to show you how by, continually using these tools all the way through the process, super important. And as a drawing on its own, it still works. This is an exercise in continuing to observe. I do think though that when you're trying to practice this, that's part of that challenge is keeping up with that energy to keep self-correcting, because at a certain point your brain just turns off and you're like, I'm done, and you just start drawing what your brain thinks you should be drawing.
How do you keep from doing that?
Well, I did it here clearly. I stopped, at a crucial moment, and then I built all these other things around it. So I think it's just being, staying present. Another thing I think also is maybe I went too detailed too soon with these other elements, and then I didn't have enough energy for other, crucial scaffolding. So the lesson here is to work on your piece as a whole, get all that scaffolding in while your brain has the energy for it, because the details are almost brainless. Like that's really the fun part, So I probably should have gone through, identified where that hand was, got all those angles accurate before I started laying in detail. Then I wouldn't have gotten tired by this point. So there's your lesson.
Nice.
Save energy for the important things at the beginning. But I'm happy overall. I think it's pretty successful. So what I'm going to do is just real quick, I'm going to just add some shading to this one. And one of the things I love about this technique too is, as a drawing, I like keeping some of that scaffolding in, even in the final piece. So I don't know how much I'm going to keep in, but I'm just going to grab this, let's see, my Lasso Fill tool, and I'm just going to start blocking in this color. Strong silhouette.
Starting to add a little bit of those darks that you talked about that this might need.
Yeah, it's looking good. Well, you got a lot done.
I think it's helped.
See, in the last 5 minutes here, just try to get as much of this block in as I can.
If you go to the Grand Canyon, you may not want to do it right now, but there's a great restaurant that we had a chance to eat at by chance. And beautiful spot.
Yeah.
But what's really neat is they have original Grand Canyon artwork hanging.
Oh, that's fun.
And there's some beautiful, some of them, quite old.
Yeah, that's neat. And if anyone has any more questions in the last 5 minutes, please feel free to ask. Good point, Ariel. Good reminders about mental energy it takes. Sometimes I think it's just me, so it's good to know the pros experience it too. Yes. It happens. Just a normal part of drawing.
What pros is she talking about?
Just, yeah, exactly. You, not me. But to that point, I think that goes to show, right? It's not this, for lack of a better word, magical, automatic process, right? It's like I've been drawing a long time. It's not this mysterious process. It's something that requires constant work and constant attention all the time. But it's what makes it rewarding, really, right? Because it's a success that can be replicated as long as you keep thinking about it. All right, I'm going to add a light.
These little dark, Ruben.
What's that?
I'm just starting to pop in these little dark that you mentioned, and it really is helping me start to see what the final piece might look like.
Yeah, that's looking good. It's almost like where that shadow turns into some of that bounce light.
Yeah, and you know what's funny is as much as you pre-mix colors, you find as you go along, certain things start taking on a different color.
Yeah.
You know, it's sometimes it does have a life of its own. I'm using a burgundy color that I'm sort of surprised about that it's working, or it seems to be working.
Yeah, it's looking good.
And
Shane wants to know, aside from work, how do you decide what subjects you want to paint for yourself? Well, Amber will tell you that I spent the last 2 days trying to figure out what I was going to draw today. I don't know. Some days it's just, I cannot figure out what to draw. And that's when I just need to stop thinking about it and even just do something mundane. This picture I had forgotten I had a file folder of things that I had seen online. And I'm like, one day I'm going to draw that. So that is something I try to do. And it saved me on this time because I pulled this picture out like a year ago or longer, thinking one day I wanted to draw it, and then I forgot about it. But it was when I saw it again, I was like, that's right, I wanted to draw that. Have you ever heard of the artist Alpe Efe, Eric?
what's that?
Have you ever heard of the artist named Alpe Efe?
What?
He's an oil painter. He's pretty amazing.
No.
And he does lots of small just paintings in his notebook, all in oil, just really beautiful stuff.
I've heard of Soroya.
Yeah, that's a classic. No, this guy's contemporary, but he has a YouTube video, a recent one where he's just like draw the simple things, and I think he draws like a rooster or a chicken. So sometimes it's it's good to just draw the simple things. All right, get a little bit of that light in there. A couple minutes left here.
I don't think I'm going to finish this, but I got close, Ruben.
Yeah, man, it's looking good. That's amazing how much you got done, really.
I think that, so sometimes you can come back and glaze over this kind of a thick color. If I wanted to darken or lighten, you can add a little glaze to kind of control that. But I think just going over another pass and kind of pronouncing these layers of values.
Yeah. Hey.
On all plateaus, like.
My mom said
Yeah.
she's on the show. Hey, Mom. Thanks for joining. I do owe.
Well, I have to say hi to my mom.
Say hi to
who's
your
watching
mom.
too. Then.
My mom was the one who made me, when I was little, pay attention to all these things at a time where I just only wanted to not learn and have fun, and now it's all paid off. Thanks, Bob.
Listen to your mother.
Yeah, that's right. All right, I'm just gonna get some bright sky back here. Strong silhouette. Ariel says, when digital painting in Clip Studio, how do you decide the amount of paint combined with the density of paint on your brush? I just use the basic, the default settings, really. I don't customize a lot of the brush, and I just work mostly with opacity changes. I usually work at around like 90%, so it's pretty opaque, and I try not to do a lot of transparent layering. In that sense, I like to paint as traditionally as possible when painting digitally, because I just think it feels more direct for me. So yeah, I mostly use the default settings, really. Okay, I'm gonna do one more thing before we sign off here. I think it's just going to be get a little bit of this. Hang on. Skin tones. I just want to lighten up those skin tones a little bit. So he has a little bit of differentiation between his hair. Something like that. And then one more shadow pass, super quick, just because we need a little bit of this shadows in here. I love the Lasso Fill in Clip Studio. Just a great way to get some quick shadows in here. And it just has this super graphic style, I love it. I can always come in here with my blend tool and just blend out some of these more distracting shapes. Hey, it was so good to see so many of our friends online today. Thank you for joining us. We never know if maybe like 2 people show up, and it's still great. And join us while we sketch and paint. So I think that's it. I might come
Absolutely.
in here a little bit later and just drop in some some grass or something. But outside of that, we'll try to post something, the results of this on Instagram, and see how it came out. So what do you think, Eric?
If this
Done?
comes together, I'll post this one.
Yeah.
I'll post this on Instagram maybe tomorrow. Work on it this afternoon. Nice work. I look forward to
Look forward to the next time.
Hey, that looks great, buddy.
Thanks, man. Hope everyone has a good rest of your weekend. Make sure to take out some time for drawing, and